Hi everyone. Today we're going to start talking about some tricky equations. And there are a couple different types we'll look at. But the first is equations that have more negative signs going in there. And really that we have a negative coefficient of x, a negative number in front of that x. Sometimes it's right in your face and sometimes it's a little bit hidden. So we're going to look at a few ways to avoid being tricked by these equations. So our first equation is this. 3 minus 2x equals negative 9. And as I look through in this equation, I feel a little bit tricked right away because I'm used to seeing the x as like the first thing that comes, the first term, having to do something with x, but in this case it's coming up second. And I'm also feeling a little tricked because I'm subtracting it off, and we know that subtracting can make things a little bit more confusing. So I'm going to use some skills I already have. Where I see a subtraction sign, I always am going to change it into adding a negative. So that's my first hint. Always add the opposite. Once I've added the opposite and I have an addition problem, I know that I can switch my terms around. The commutative property tells me that those terms can switch spots over that addition sign. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. I'm going to keep my negative sign purple just so it sticks out at me. Once I've rewritten this equation, it looks pretty similar to ones we've done before, except there's a negative sign in front of that 2, meaning that x's coefficient is really negative. But I'm still going to follow my same steps. I'm going to figure out, okay, what here is happening to my variable x? It looks like x is being multiplied by negative 2 and added with 3 after it's multiplied. So that means that I need to do the inverse of those operations. I need to divide by negative 2, and I need to subtract 3. I think back about my steps. I know that I need to go in SADMAP order, the opposite of the order of operations. So first I'm going to subtract 3. Second, I'm going to divide by negative 2. Now that I have my steps, I have my order, I'm ready to go. I'm going to draw that line down for my equal sign, and I'll get started. The first thing I said I would do is subtract 3 from both sides. I subtract on either side of that line. On this side, I have to think for a second, negative 12 minus 3. That's going to, negative 9 minus 3 is going to equal negative 12. I'm going further into the negatives there. And then on the left-hand side, 3 and minus 3 cancel out, leaving me with just negative 2x. I've done my first step. I see the result of my equation. I'm good to move on. The next thing I need to do is I need to divide both sides through by negative 2. Keeping in mind all of my sign rules. On the right-hand side, negative 12 divided by negative 2, same signs, is going to equal a positive answer, positive 6. And on the left-hand side, multiplying by negative 2 and dividing by negative 2 cancels each other out, and I'm just left with x. Because this was a problem that had a lot of negative signs, I need to be careful and make sure that I went through it right. So at the bottom of my page, I'm just going to do a quick check. I'm going to take my equation, 3 plus negative 2 times my answer equals negative 9. I think that x is 6, so I'll fill that in and I'll do out this work. So I see 3 plus, okay, here is multiplying comes before that adding when I'm checking, and I get negative 12 plus 3 is negative 9. And I'll stop and think through about that. Well, 3 and negative 12 are having a battle. So I need to subtract their values. 12 minus 3 is 9, but the negatives win. So I got it right. That does equal negative 9. It checks out. Let's look through one more example of number 2. In number 2, I have a similar thing happening. 10 minus 6x is 34. So I'm going to go through first step. I'm going to add the opposite. That gives me the equation 10 plus negative 6x is 34. I can switch around the terms here because of the commutative property says I can always switch around that addition. So I'll rewrite my equation as negative 6x plus 10 is 34. Making that negative 6 stand out because this is this thing we always forget. Now that it's in the order I'm used to, I'm ready to solve. So I will drop my line down for my equal signs to help me organize my work. And I'll think about what's happening here to x. So x is getting multiplied by negative 6 and added with 10. I'm going to undo that by adding, dividing negative 6 and subtracting 10. Once I have my two steps, I think which order. Okay, the subtraction first, that's step 1, then division. And I'm ready to start. On both sides of my equal sign, I will subtract 10, and I'm going to line that up nice and neat. 34 minus 10, that's 24. 10 and negative 10 cancel, and I am left with negative 6x. I stop. I have completed that step. I'll check it off. And my next step is to divide through by negative 6. Negative 6 times x, and then divided by negative 6 is going to cancel out, leaving me with just x. And 24 divided by negative 6, well, 24 divided by 6 is 4, but different signs make it negative. And so that is what I think my answer is, negative 4. Going back to my original equation to check that quickly, 10 minus 6 times negative 4, I'll fill that in, is 34. I would start by doing this multiplication here. So 6 times negative 4 is negative 24. And then I have 10 minus negative 24. Well, I know that subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive, adding the opposite, and 10 plus 24 is 34. So that was the correct answer.